For every MCU movie that fans love, there's another that is extremely divisive and controversial. And what better example to kick things off with than Deadpool and Wolverine? You see, when Marvel announced that Deadpool and Wolverine were coming to the MCU, like all fans, I was extremely excited for this. However, after I saw the film last summer, I was very disappointed. While everyone else who saw it with me told me that Marvel's back, I was like, what? Like, it's a fine film, I'll admit. It does exactly what all modern day MCU films do, have cringy humor, subpar action scenes, post-credit scenes not worth staying around for. It had it all. And before you guys jump to the comments telling me that I'm insane, I want to quickly recap the highlights of this movie. Because, surprise, surprise, Marvel can still provide some solid moments in their crappy new films. First, I loved how the movie finally gave us the yellow Wolverine suit in all its glory. Like about damn time, guys, which Fox never gave us. And something the Deadpool movies never lack are that the fight scenes felt heavy and messy in the best way. Specifically, that opening dance sequence, which for the longest time couldn't get off of my For You page, months after the movie premiered. And of course, Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman's chemistry is undeniable. Like, you can really feel how much Logan wants to kill Wade every time his dumbass opens his mouth. I love it! And I'm pretty sure all fans can agree on these positives. They're really good. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Look, the TVA subplot felt very half-baked, with rules that changed whenever the movie conveniently needed them to. The overall plot was just a mess, and often felt like it was stalling just to set up the next gag. And the thing that split me and other fans the most was the cameos and fan service. Some people love seeing Johnny Storm, Blade, Elektra, and Gambit all pop up, but a lot of us felt it was Marvel taking the easy way out. This is a massive problem that not only defines the multiverse saga, but something we'll see more of if you keep watching. And instead of earning emotional beats through the story, it leaned on nostalgia and felt so lazy. Many fans online started to point out that once the nostalgia wears off, you're left with a movie that's more about checking boxes than telling a tight, satisfying story. If you beautiful people are still watching, I want to hit my goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers by October. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed, and it would help this small channel of hopes and dreams a lot. And nowhere is nostalgia more evident than in Spider-Man No Way Home. After the whole debacle where Marvel and Sony ended the deal for a month back in 2019, I was extremely relieved, because up until that point, we barely saw Peter become a street-level Spider-Man. But once the first trailer was released in August of 2021, I knew that wasn't going to happen. Don't get me wrong, I was so freaking hyped when I saw Alfred Molina's Doc Ock in that trailer, and from that point on, I was blinded by nostalgia. But was it because the Sam Raimi movies were good? Yes it was. Seeing it 2 days early at a 4D theater was something I'm never going to forget, but when I rewatched it not too long after, I was surprisingly bored. Up until the apartment scene, the movie is just a slog to get through, and nothing interesting happens, which brings me to the core problem of this movie. No Way Home relies heavily on cameos and fan service to keep the audience engaged, rather than telling a compelling story. I know, right? Needing to tell a good story in a modern-day superhero film? Who would ever think that? And it's not like Marvel will continue doing it. Look, once Toby and Andrew show up, the plot basically stops, so we can just have meme recreations and callbacks. And don't get me wrong, those crowd reactions were insane and completely warranted, but when you strip the nostalgia away, there's barely a story left, holding it all together. The spell logic never makes sense, the villains flip-flop whenever the script needs them to, and the multiverse rules, they're made up on the spot. Like, why did Doc Ock come back only for the final fight? Because the script needed him to, after he disappeared earlier in the film without a trace. It feels less like a Spider-Man movie and more like Marvel's greatest hits. Some fans will call it the ultimate Spider-Man celebration, and I get that. It delivered on the hype. Just a few years ago, the thought of seeing Toby, Andrew, and Tom together felt like a fever dream, but a lot of us walked out realizing it was just Marvel leaning on our childhood memories instead of giving Peter Parker a focused, street-level story. And speaking of movies that tried to do way too much at once, let's talk about Avengers: Age of Ultron. Off the bat, this isn't a bad movie. In fact, I actually think it's criminally underrated, but it's still one of the most divisive films in the MCU, and a lot of fans just don't like it, for obvious reasons. The biggest reason fans turn on Age of Ultron is because it's overstuffed. It couldn't just be an Avengers sequel. It had to tease Infinity War, set up Civil War, and cram in Infinity Stone lore. Thor's random cave subplot might be the single most infamous example of Marvel slowing down a movie just to advertise the next one. Then there's Ultron himself. He should have been terrifying. This AI gone rogue with god-level power, but instead he spends half the movie cracking sarcastic one-liners.
I'm glad you asked that because I wanted to take this time to explain my evil plan.
Some fans enjoyed James Spader's performance, I among them, but most walked away thinking Marvel had wasted one of their greatest villains from the comics. And we can't ignore the forced Black Widow and Hulk romance. It was weird. This was weird, their scenes feel awkward and shoehorned in, and the monster infertility line remains one of the most hated pieces of dialogue in the entire MCU. But here's the thing. For all its flaws, Age of Ultron quietly shaped the MCU more than most people realize. Wanda and Vision's introductions pay off years later in Infinity War and WandaVision. The Sokovia disaster directly triggers Civil War, and the seeds of Thor's Ragnarok arc are planted here. It's a messy setup, yes, but the ripple effects are massive, which makes this movie feel more important in hindsight than people gave it credit for at the time. Well, not entirely. And then we have Captain Marvel. This movie might be the very definition of divisive. Brie Larson's take on Carol Danvers definitely has her supporters, and the movie made $1 billion at the box office, so clearly it connected with plenty of people. But no, we all know why. It's because this thing was sandwiched between the two biggest movies of all time. Marvel could have released a video of Kevin Feige taking a shit, and it still would have made $1 billion. But for a lot of fans, you at home included, and don't lie, you know this movie didn't work. Carol comes across as a total emotionless Mary Sue. The political undertones rub some people the wrong way, and her character arc felt flat because she was already unstoppable from the start. The humor is bad, the action feels weightless, and honestly, the de-aged Fury doesn't look that great at all. And personally, this is far from Marvel's finest work. It was rushed, it was preachy, and it felt like Marvel tried to force her as the new face of the MCU without ever giving us a reason to care about her.
I like this one.
And if Captain Marvel felt forced and shallow, Iron Man 3 went the opposite way. Bold, messy, and maybe the most interesting Marvel film ever. And honestly, I didn't really like it that much. The biggest issue is the Mandarin twist. For years, Marvel teased the 10 rings, and fans thought we were finally getting Tony Stark's ultimate villain, the guy tied to his origin story. Instead, we got Trevor Slattery, a drunk actor pretending to be the Mandarin. Some critics praise it as clever subversion, but most fans, me included, felt trolled. It's one of the most hated twists in superhero movie history, and Ben Kingsley had the chops to play this intimidating, conniving villain. It's just a shame it was wasted on this clownery. Shane Black basically turned this into a Christmas detective story, where Iron Man is barely Iron Man, he's just man. Sure, I can respect the attempt at showing Tony's PTSD and stripping him down, but it never clicked for me. It felt like I was watching a Tony Stark side adventure, not the third film in Marvel's biggest solo franchise at the time. Oh, and that ending? A CGI fireworks show of exploding suit. For the whole Tony doesn't need the armor arc. That was contradicted in his very next on-screen appearance. Now the crazy part is that over time, Iron Man 3 has gotten this weird wave of reappraisal. Some fans argue that it's actually one of the boldest MCU films because it dared to take risks and put Tony front and center without hiding him behind the suit. Which, no, the movie's called Iron Man, guys. He should be Iron Man. But I'll admit, some moments work. The barrel of monkeys rescue midair is still one of the coolest action scenes in the trilogy, but even with those highlights, I can't shake the feeling that the movie just never delivers on what it promised. When you hype up the Mandarin for years, and then make him a punchline, no amount of clever subversion saves it. So yeah, I get why some people defend this movie as a character study, but for me, it's just a messy letdown. And then finally, we have Spider-Man Far From Home. This is one of those MCU movies that really split the fan base. Like really split it. Some people love it, and some people think it's straight up boring. But here's my problem. The way it treated Peter Parker. This movie had the perfect opportunity to finally make him Spider-Man. Instead of stepping into his own after Endgame, he basically gets turned into Iron Man Jr. And even though Tony is dead by this point, you can still feel his presence in every single part of this movie, especially with Mysterio's origin. The entire story revolves around Tony's legacy, the Edith glasses, the drones, and whether Peter is the next Iron Man. Fans just wanted a street-level Spider-Man story, but instead, it feels like we got Iron Man 4 without Tony Stark. Now, the villain. Jake Gyllenhaal absolutely killed it as Mysterio. His illusion sequences, fantastic. Honestly, those might be the only scenes everyone can agree on, but the stakes, completely fake. The whole drone threat never feels real because it literally isn't. Once you realize it's all staged, the tension just collapses. There's no reason to grip the edge of your seat, and that's a problem. But then, the ending. When Mysterio exposes Peter's identity to the entire world, that cliffhanger was insane. Easily one of the boldest MCU endings ever. For me, that single reveal is the reason people still remember this movie, even if the rest of it felt like a mixed bag. And tonally, wow. This movie jumps all over the place. One second it's a goofy teen comedy, then Peter is grieving Tony, then we're right back to slapstick humor. Some people like that lighter vibe, but for a lot of fans, it completely undercut the emotional weight Endgame left behind. If you like this video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment on which MCU films you think are the most divisive. And of course, check out my latest video right here. Love you guys.